Elevate TV, advancing kingdom lifestyle.
Welcome to another episode of the Gigi Report. I'm glad you're tuned in. My name is Godfrey Gichuki. I'm your host today. And I believe you're looking forward to the Gigi Report. We've had interesting episodes here. And this is another wonderful opportunity for us to go dive deep as we always do. Today we are going to be dealing with a subject I'm calling divorce justice, how to navigate through the maintenance and custody and succession issues around divorce matters. Now, the premise. A few days ago, in a matrimonial dispute case before Justice Teresia Matheka of the High Court of Kenya, she ruled that it is unfair, I'm quoting, it is unfair for courts to rule that housewives did not contribute anything to the financial progress of the family. So, that's a big issue. And so we want to see how we can navigate through the issues of maintenance, custody, and all that, all those issues and the succession that are around divorce. We're basically talking about divorce justice. And I have a guest today, Mimi Aldrin. Very interesting name. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Very good.
Thank you.
Good. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to just remind you, as always, the Gigi Report is a platform for big, bold, and honest conversations on a broad range of subjects, socio-economic, philosophical, theological, and all that. And today, we're going to look at legal matters. And I am therefore going to first introduce my guest, then I'm going to then get the conversation underway. My guest this today is Mimi Aldrin. She's an advocate of the High Court of Kenya and the managing partner of A&C, that is Amulyoto and Company. She's going to give us more details about that. Advocates are here in Nairobi, Kenya. Aldrin and her LLB, that is a bachelor's in law from the Catholic University of East Africa, and a diploma in law, that is at the Kenya School of Law, and is currently pursuing a master's program, LLM, in international law from University of Nairobi. Aldrin specializes in family law, succession, probate and administration, estate planning, and matrimonial disputes.
Yes.
That's a very, I hope as elaborate as I can.
Yeah.
But Aldrin, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much.
I know I haven't, enumerated all your credentials, but I'll give you a chance to do that. Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, let's get this conversation underway. And please remember to share with your friends. We are both live on Facebook, Elevate TV Kenya, and YouTube, Elevate TV Kenya. So please share widely and let's get the conversation going, and put your comments down there, and then we can get back to you. Thank you so much. Good. Mimi, I love your name.
Thank you.
It's interesting. So, tell us, let's begin from your early years, career-wise, and what inspired you to study law.
Thank you so much. Wow, this is an honor. My early years, I can say from when I was about 3 years old, I was always arguing about something. So you know the way your child will always pick a fight with you, but then you ends up winning the fight. That was me.
Okay.
So my mom always kind of knew that this is where I'd end up. But then toward high school, I was like, okay, so do I do law? Do I do aviation? And that's why in my LLM, I'm doing air and space law as an area of specialty.
Okay.
I was torn between the two. But toward third form, I kind of knew I was going to become a lawyer. There was a way I had a passion for justice, and I still have this really deep passion for justice, seeing justice being done and knowing the difference between being fair and being just. So that was where the passion started, and then I got to meet, the more the passion grew, I got to meet advocates at my home church. That was at the time Sitam Valley Road. And my mom introduced me to two advocates, and I started asking questions about the profession, and I started watching Vioja. You know, I was really interested. I wanted to know what it's all about. Vioja doesn't give you the real perspective of the Kenyan courts, but I wanted to know. Then those Boston Legal, and eventually Suits. So, yeah.
Yeah, okay, yeah, Boston Legal.
Yes.
They're very popular, actually, in the movies and other movies, you know, on legal matters.
Yes.
It's very, there is some kind of glamour around it, do you think?
Yes, I think so, because you see the way they are dressed, you see the cars they are driving, you see the way they argue cases and win, and in all the movies they're always winning. Yeah. So you really feel good because you always want to win an argument, you know? Yes. And that was my drive, like I want to win every argument. I really did.
All right.
That was a drive.
Absolutely. And that's amazing, amazing. All right, so so you went to Catholic University of East Africa. How was your experience there?
It was great. I didn't exactly fail. So I did great.
Yes.
It was eye-opening as well, because you feel like you have a perspective with regard to the subjects that are being brought on the table.
Yes.
And then you discover you really know nothing.
Okay.
Because it's so wide. There are so many issues. Like there's the foundation of law that gives you your what is called your jurisprudential thought.
Yes.
So you get to know whether you're a natural law person, or whether you're a realist, or whether you're a positivist, because that grows with regard to how your arguments will be placed out.
Right.
So I found myself always in the natural law school of thought, which is the law of God.
Yes.
I always found myself, that is my basis, that is my foundation for everything. So even as we were advancing arguments in class, you know, it's kind of like having a moot court. You find you're always going for the law of God. So you're always comparing that. So that experience was fantastic. It opened up my mind to greater things, greater ways of dealing with disputes. It's not just about arguing, it's also about writing.
Yes.
And it begins with what you write, actually.
Okay.
Before you argue it, you have to write it, then you have to prove what you've written.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then that placed the demand. And I think, is that the reason why most people want, so if you're going to pursue law, you need to be very good languages, isn't it?
Yes, you have to be good at your languages.
Yes.
So, of course, now they have bridging courses. So it doesn't mean that if you fail at high school, that you won't be able to get in. You can do the bridging course, but you have to be good at languages. For instance, the court has its official languages being English and Kiswahili. I'm not so good at Kiswahili, I won't lie.
No, we witnessed somebody struggling the other day on national television.
Yes.
Yes.
But at least with one of those languages or both, you
Yes.
should be able to be proficient in both
Yes.
or one. That's because that's the official, like I said, it's the official language.
Yes.
You can imagine an advocate who cannot communicate properly.
Yes.
And that's why one of the courses is also communication skills, how to accurately put your thoughts together and how to convey them in the shortest way possible, you know, and for people to understand what you're saying.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely. And then, although we don't want to go too much into that, I have noticed that lawyers talk word for word, very slow. Is it to give the judge time to write what they are saying or something?
Yes. Unfortunately, we're not yet in the era of having, you know, people typing out the proceedings for us.
Yeah.
The proceedings are typed out after the judge has been taking notes.
Yes.
So we have to talk slowly so that they capture the key points at least.
Okay.
And remember, I've said that we draft everything.
Yes.
So at least we're relying on what is being drafted, but we tend to do what is called highlighting in court.
Yes.
So when we're highlighting, then the judge is able to take those brief notes, which end up as record of the court. Those are now the proceedings.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Very good. So that's good background. So the elephant in the house is this thing called divorce.
Yes.
And the justice issues around divorce.
Yeah.
And so, because I know this show is limited, we can't go into all the legal matters. So we want to focus on that. So I want us to begin by expounding on family law and its essential provisions, in especially from a Christian point of view, what we need to know, what a Christian needs to know, because this is a Christian television. Most of our audience are Christians, and some of the people watching are pastors, so who have to handle a lot of these, disputes before they get to the court, before they get to you guys. They come through the pastor. So I think it might be helpful if you can expound for us some of the issues, some of the key matters on family law, and if you can touch in particular divorce and succession, divorce, and custody. Yes.
So just in the same order that you've put them, succession, divorce, custody. Custody being of children.
Yes.
So for succession matters, the key aspects I would say is estate planning is very, very key. Making sure that you have your will in place, a written will, preferably not an oral one, because the oral one has its setbacks. People forget the contents of the oral will once you're gone. And it is only valid for 3 months before you die. So then you have to have your written will in place, and it has to be valid, because most written wills are also invalidated in court. Wills have to go through what is called probate, which is court process. So now you want to avoid the situation where people are coming to fight in court because of you not having a will, and then people coming in, aside from the nuclear family setting, there's also your siblings coming in, they want a share of your estate. So it's good to put your affairs in order before you die. And that's my biggest advice right now. It's an ongoing discussion we're having. That's the highlight of succession, I would say. If you have a larger property, I would say also do a trust. Incorporate a trust. That one, an advocate will be able to guide you. Even for wills, an advocate will be able to guide you accurately on that. So for succession, there is what is called testate and intestate. So testate meaning you died with a written will. Intestate meaning you died without a written will. Both of those are catered for court process. Just make sure that your affairs are in order. Provide for your beneficiaries, whoever they may be. Might be a nephew you've adopted, your own children, your spouse. Maybe you want to provide for your mother, maybe you have medical care or whatever, just provide for that. So that's with regard to succession. Then also there is the aspect of divorce and maintenance, which is a hot topic right now.
Right, very, very huge.
Very huge topic.
Yeah, especially like the story I've referred to. We began this conversation offline. A few days ago, and basically, alluded to the fact that there was a case recently in court where Justice, Matheka, Teresia Matheka, made a ruling. It's been trending on social media. The conversations are still going, and people arguing about the issue she raised was the issue of the housewife. So this how do you quantify what a housewife does? Of course, now by the time it gets there, it's because there is a very big dispute. This woman I was looking after this woman, and she wasn't working, and she was looking after the babies, and I bought all these properties, because I was the one working, and what claim does she have? I'm trying to frame the argument. Yes, so maybe you can go into that.
What I would say is, for any divorce proceeding, there are facets of that dispute in itself between the couple, and then there's the aspect of distribution of the matrimonial property. Then there's the custody and maintenance of the children. So it always cuts across those 3 areas of law. So with regard to the custody of children, it's about the visitation of the children, who will have physical custody, who will have actual custody, who will be visiting, have access and visitation rights. What are the rights of the child as per the Constitution and as per the Children's Act? We know the basic right for a child is food, shelter, clothing, education, good health. So if you're able to afford that, then the court will tend to give you custody, actual physical custody. Also because the Children's Act says that the mother has primary physical custody of the children as long as they are under the age of 18, because the definition of a child is anyone who's under the age of 18. Good.
I'm going to interrupt you on that, because I want us to expound that a little bit. The clarification, what the law currently provides. So we are saying the law assumes or defines the person who has so first of all, the law defines the needs or the rights of the child, and then argues that the mother is in the best position between the two parents, is the mother who has the like the best chance
Yes.
of supporting this child or
Yes.
these children in terms of their health, their food, clothing. What did you say there, right?
In terms of, mostly it's the maternal care.
Yes,
Of a
yes,
minor.
yeah.
Then all the others will follow, because whether or not the other parent is there, that can be granted in their absence. But the maternal care is something that the court looks at. That's what the statute looks at.
Yes.
You cannot replace a mother's care.
Okay.
Even if you compare with that judgment by Justice Mateka, when she's talking about the role of a housewife, the role of a mother, the presence, the homework that is being assisted, the bathing of the children, making sure that they are healthy. If the child is unwell, chances are it's the mother who's at home, being a housewife, who will take note first,
Yes.
as opposed to now a parent who's in the office.
Okay.
Not to say that they're a bad parent, but
Yes.
because the primary caregiver is almost always a mother. But in the flip side, if the father is the primary caregiver, in the sense that either the mother is an absentee parent, or she's an alcoholic, or is of unsound mind, then the father will get custody of the children.
Okay.
Yes.
So the court does an assessment.
Yes.
In terms of between the two people,
Yes.
who qualifies to be described as the primary caregiver.
Yes.
And the word primary is important.
It's important, especially when you're discussing custody.
Okay.
So who, in terms of primary caregiver, this is the person who'll stay with the children for majority of the time.
Okay.
So unless there's an agreement between the parents, so there's something called a parental responsibility agreement, where the parents decide amicably, like we can have 50-50 with the children. So I can have the children Monday to Thursday, then you have the children Friday to Monday, and you decide it amicably, then the court will not interfere. But where there's a dispute, then now we refer to the Constitution and we refer to the Children's Act, and those are the provisions of the law as it is.
Very good.
Yeah.
Very good. I wanted us to, I thought it's important to open that up because, once those disputes emerge, you don't know, you want to understand what's going on. So we've said that, so the custody dispute is really around who is the primary caregiver,
Yes.
and the fact that mothers, the maternal care. Certainly a man cannot be a mother. Although we know there are exceptions, and some of the exceptions are amazing stories of men who literally grew their daughters.
Yes.
There are men who have actually literally, say like when the mother passes on, and they change the diapers. Even when the girls got to the puberty, they organized for the sanitary stuff, and literally taught the girls how to handle that. Yeah, there are fathers who need some serious medal for the hard work they have done.
And
so.
If I may say, Pastor Gigi, there's also a recent case, I think last week in Mombasa, where there was a video that was trending of children who were shouting that they don't want to be with their mother. And this has been something that's been happening every single time there's a ruling or a judgment in favor of the mother and the children are not agreeable to it. There's always an uproar of someone who's recorded it. And in those cases, then you have to question whether the children were heard. There's the right of the child to be heard in court.
Yes.
But they won't be heard in open court. They'll be heard in what is called in camera. So in chambers or in the court, but then everyone else is told to leave so that the child is comfortable to have that conversation with the judge or the magistrate. And in those conversations, the child is asked who they would like to stay with. Tell me about mommy, tell me about daddy, because their rights need to be taken care of.
Right.
There's something called the best interest of the child in all circumstances.
Okay.
So if the best interest is the father, despite all things, despite the fact that the law says the mother is the primary caregiver, then the court will award custody to the father.
Okay.
Yes, then there's also a children's officer report, which is very important.
Okay.
Yes.
Very good. Matters well said. So, so custody is around those issues.
Yes.
And now the maintenance.
Yes.
is the other thing. Yeah, the maintenance. That's where now the Justice Madeka's ruling was touching on. So tell us what the law provides.
So with regard to maintenance, So this is, with any divorce dispute, there's the actual divorce, then now the maintenance dispute comes after.
Yes.
That's because you don't want to mix issues.
Yes.
People get very, like I told you earlier, people get very emotive around family law matters.
Yeah.
So they've gone through the divorce and now it's about parcels of land. So when it comes to maintenance and division of matrimonial property, people tend to mix the two issues. Division rather of matrimonial property is
Yes.
now where you and your spouse have property, and there's now the Marriage Act will deal with a bit of it, and then the Matrimonial Property Act will deal with the other part of it. And that act, the latter, matrimonial property, it deals with now how to do away with, how to deal with division of property.
Okay.
So if you can actually acquire property prior to your marriage, and it is property solely owned by you. It's separate property. So I like calling it SP, separate property.
Yes.
And then now there's MP, which is matrimonial property, which
Yes.
now it is presumed that when you acquire it, even if it's in your name as Gigi, then you've acquired it in trust for your spouse, and therefore it's a 50-50 ownership.
Okay.
It is presumed to be that way.
Yes.
Now, when it comes to disputes in court, what tends to happen is if you guys decide to separate amicably, now after the divorce is done, you want to plan out your distribution properly and amicably out of court, then that's fantastic, because then you'll deal with it aside. But if it comes to court, they have to quantify what is called contribution. Now,
Okay.
that was the crux of the matter.
Yes.
This is now where you find over time, from the 80s and the 70s, the judgments are around certain cases where now you find initially it was about strict monetary contribution. How much have you put in?
Yes.
And that was one of the cases that was mentioned in her judgment, Echaria versus Echaria.
Yes.
So what is your strict contribution?
Yes.
Now, over time, that has evolved. People are now asking questions about now what she said. How much did you contribute in terms of when I woke up in the morning, how crisp was my suit before I got to the office?
Yes.
How are the children taken care of? How am I taken care of? You know,
Yes,
the
yes.
food, how is it being cooked? The hiring of the house help, the servicing of the vehicles. At least reminding your husband, service the vehicle.
Yes.
And also on the flip side, there's also men who are house husbands and they do all these things. Like you said, there are men who require, accolades because they take care of the home
Yes.
while the wife is out there working. So now that's now what it calls, when we're talking about what is your contribution, and that was the thing about it. So maintenance now is about, like, I have the children, I have gotten custody of the children, and I'm your ex-spouse, right?
Yes.
What is entitled to me to facilitate my life thereafter? So is it rent? That will be a maintenance issue. Is it food? Is it medical cover? Is it clothing? Is it the nanny? There are various aspects. Entertainment fee. There is something like
I
an
am
entertainment
telling you,
fee.
Adrian, that's where the drama is.
Yes.
That's where the real drama is.
Yes.
Because, the cases that, come in the public domain, in the media, the sweet ones, the one we like reading and gossiping about.
Yes.
And I'm saying we,
Yes.
in a very, I'm using that word deliberately.
Yes.
Because some of these people watching us, they have been imbibing that. They read those stories.
Yeah.
They really smile and share them.
Yes.
They don't want to accept that they're actually gossiping, but anyway, they have to deal with their own scenes. But so those stories become very juicy.
Yes.
Because we see these guys disputing over how much is entertainment. So we've had a few of those disputes where somebody is quoting some number for entertainment,
Yes.
and it's like everybody's going, really? Connie, where is she going to be entertaining herself?
Yes.
And in any case, she's divorced. Does
Yes.
she need all that entertainment money? Okay, you can understand rent. You can understand school fees.
Yes.
And then, of course, the school fees stated, because those figures get to the media. You're wondering, kwani atampeleka shule gani? The whole issue of the school.
Yes.
What kind of school is that going to be? All of a sudden, the divorce conversation, somebody is asking for such big money, and you're wondering, were those children in that school, or are they is she now trying to dramatize and ask for such big money and pretend she's going to take those children to those very high cost schools? So you understand where most people watching,
yeah.
where the conversation is, right?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, so good. So there have been those issues around the numbers, and the dispute, the one that triggered this conversation, is that where Justice Matheka was talking about the housewife.
Yeah.
So have you witnessed those things? Maybe let's come to your personal experience, because being a lawyer, what has been your experience in the corridors of justice?
You do witness all these things and more. I mean, in terms of maintenance, you find more often than not, the child was in Riara, for instance, and then now upon your divorce, now you want to take your child to St. Andrew's Story.
Right.
So it's also an instance of parents trying to pit their children, like you put the child in the middle of the dispute. So it's a tug of war. So you're trying to punish the other spouse for the sins that have occurred in the subsistence of your marriage, which is not permissible. The children also have the right to emotional welfare.
Yes.
Health, the definition of health is also inclusive of mental welfare, emotional welfare, not just the physical. So you do find a lot of that in the matrimonial disputes. You find a lot of unforgiveness, a lot of malice, a lot of hatred. So most times we find ourselves questioning, why did you get married? Was there love in the beginning? Because love has no opposite. You find cruelty.
Right.
No, now the crux of the matter is that adultery, the reasons for divorce, adultery, cruelty, desertion, those are serious
and I think I like those things. Not that I like them. The issues you're mentioning.
Yeah.
Cruelty.
Yes.
Adultery.
Yes.
And
desertion.
And desertion.
Yes.
Especially desertion. So this is a woman you married. Okay. Let me talk about the two parties, because they married each other.
Yes.
So these two guys married each other, and then one person deserts the other. Absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And really produces a lot of trouble.
Yes. Because half the time the wife is not even sure, or the husband is not sure what is happening. And I can't just say the wife, because more often than not now the cases are rising of even women deserting the home.
Yes.
For even a year. And this is, we're not talking about a judicial separation.
Yes.
Because the JS, a judicial separation, you've gone to court and you're going to try out a separation for 1 year. Thereafter, you go back to court and report the findings for the court to give a decision on whether or not you should continue being married or not.
Yes.
This is a couple that have lived together but are just living separate lives because one deserted the home. There's no giving of conjugal rights.
Yes.
There's marital rape. Very strange things going on. Adultery, even to the extent of bringing in the other party into the matrimonial home.
Okay.
That I've seen in some of the cases I've handled. And it affects the children. More often than not, those actions affect the children. There's also the cruelty aspect of even locking up a spouse in a pantry, or locking up the spouse in a basement.
Wow.
Bringing your house help into your matrimonial bed when you've locked up the spouse in the pantry. These are cases that I have actually personally handled. So you tend to wonder, like, what happens that it gets there. But one of the things that I tend to do personally is to refer them for counseling, because it's important to attempt alternative dispute resolution mechanisms. The courts are now encouraging that with all matters that are filed, be it matrimonial disputes or not.
Okay, very good. Okay. So, ladies and gentlemen, as you follow this conversation, you realize we have decided to go deep into the conversation. These are not matters that people are willing to talk about. It's like, we just touch on them, but we have to open up this space. Divorce is that place you don't want to go. It's the hell hole you never want to dive into. So please, as we talk about this, I know it's very emotive, but we have to have these conversations. So we're going to go into a short break. When we come back, we continue from where we are, because we also want to look at some of the other ways that we can handle these disputes, and how you can avoid the pitfalls. All right, so don't go away. Stay with us. We're coming back shortly.
Do you still pray at midnight?
Yes, I do, man.
Up to 3?
No, I don't pray. That is my culture. It's like you're asking me, do you breathe?
Okay.
So
I am sorry.
Look, 2017 till date, I'm doing the same thing. I've never skipped even a single day, praying at midnight.
Wow.
Because that's where the world is changed and shifted. Political parties are formed at that time. Destinies are shifted at that time. Even people are married, you know, that's when they increase their population, you know what I mean?
Welcome back. This is the Gigi Report, and today we are looking at divorce justice. And this is a very difficult conversation because divorce is one of those things the church is not talking about. It's that subject that you want to keep on the peripheral. We know the Bible has a lot to say about divorce. Jesus Christ himself was confronted with the matter of divorce, and he spoke into it. While we may not go into the theological issues around divorce and what the church is doing about it, today we want to have the legal conversations where the real issues are in the courtrooms and in the courts of justice, where my guest Aldrin has been, that's your domain, you are always in court. I mean, you are a lawyer, so that's where you play. So I want us to discuss the issue of why are we even talking about divorce? Is it increasing? What's going on? Why is this divorce thing now a big issue? And what has been your observation? What's driving families to that place? Right.
I would say it's lack of communication being one of the key issues.
Yes.
People are always on their gadgets. So there's no time for real one-on-one conversations. People do not know how to deal with disputes, so they become conflicts. They become a very big thing. What started out with socks being put in the wrong place ends up with adultery.
Right.
Because you are now looking for someone who will not put socks in the wrong place.
Right.
Finances, big issue. Someone is investing your money, withdrawing a little bit from your accounts and then investing it somewhere else, or spending it badly, alcoholism, debauchery and things like that. We have issues of just basic misunderstandings. You'd find these issues actually start with a very small problem. Also lack of premarital counseling. People don't want, one party does not want a child, the other one wants a child, or they both don't want children, and when they get married, someone starts feeling the need to have a child, or the external pressure of your in-laws or friends, peer pressure to live a certain lifestyle. So my next door neighbor, who's a very, very good friend, is always going for holiday in Dubai, and us, we're just always in Nairobi because we cannot afford it yet. Unemployment of one spouse, either they were always unemployed or they lost their job at some point, it becomes the core issue. And that's why you find even in the judgment of Justice Matheka, one of the issues that was discussed is the unemployment of one of the parties. Actually,
yes. And Adrian, I really want you to tell our viewers about what you have witnessed in court. Because the disputes you have listened to, as people are fighting it out and arguing.
Yes.
You were telling me some of the things of the set, and they are really frightening, the arguments. So, for example, whatever triggered this conversation was the Justice Matheka, ruling. And since it's in the public domain, and not to, of course, we are cognizant of the family affected, and we really sympathize with their issue, that particular issue. But I read part of that, what you sent me, and it turns out that, there were disputes because it seems like this gentleman lost his job, and the wife continued to work, and that really ended up in a very, through that marriage into some very serious issues. So can you tell us some of the things that you've seen driving all these issues?
Unemployment gets people to be so insecure because I don't know half the time where you are.
Right.
So you find in court, one of the things you asked me was, what have you seen in court? I do remember almost longer than that, not even 8 years ago.
Yeah.
seeing my very first divorce case at the Milimani commercial courts.
Right.
And we were seated there, full courtroom, and they were the lady was on the stand and she was giving her testimony of cruelty, being battered in the marriage, the man coming home drunk at odd hours, beating the children, and she started shedding tears, and he threatened her the first time. Then he threatened her second time, and the third time he just lunged at her and started beating her in the, in open court. And people don't realize that divorce cases are extremely emotive. People are malicious in court. They tend to say things that they wouldn't otherwise say about each other. Just mudslinging. One person says you're useless because you're unemployed. And then the other says, but you are, a prostitute. And then the other says, and these are things that I've observed during proceedings. And the judge says, please advise your client to, you're the one representing them. They need to be quiet.
Yes.
And sometimes they have to, someone has to be asked to leave the courtroom because they cannot contain the rage, the sheer rage they feel for this person that they once loved. You play a recording of their wedding and they get really angry. They do not want to see it because they don't want to come to terms with self-reflection. What led up to this with regard to you, not just the end of your spouse. The sheer disrespect we've seen for the other party in court, be it the petitioner who is the person who's brought the matter to court, or the respondent. And in Kenya we don't have agreed divorces. It's not like other jurisdictions where you agree to divorce and then you put out a statement. In Kenya, one person has to refuse.
Yes.
So you can imagine the person who's refusing is coming with their own counter to what you've put in your petition, and they now start mudslinging you even worse, bringing evidence of you being a thief, being evidence that can even get you fired from your job, accusing you maybe of sleeping with your employer, things like that.
Yeah.
So it gets really messy. You even forget the Christian aspect of things. 3/4 of the time I don't see the Christian in the whole aspect in court.
Yes.
You tend to wonder a lot, where is God in all this? Because the parties are not acting very Christ-like.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And Adrien, I think you must be a very bold woman because
Thank you.
because witnessing that, and how does that make you feel for your profession? Do you sometimes feel maybe I shouldn't get into this murky field or something? Right?
You tend to feel there's an emotion that is sparked in you.
Yes.
Lawyers, we're told that lawyers are emotionless creatures.
Yes.
It's not that we're emotionless. We leave our emotions at the door.
Right.
Pick it up on our way home.
Yes.
If you find a lawyer crying imagine you're crying in court, Gigi, and then I'm crying too.
Yes.
I mean, that's a very awkward situation, isn't it?
Yes.
So we tend to have to be tough for our clients.
Yes.
But it doesn't mean that we don't hurt. We hurt when we see these things happening. I told you of a story earlier of guys who were fighting in court in 2019 in my presence in a divorce case.
Yes.
And I just stepped aside. I was like, this has nothing to do with me, So you tend to, sometimes it even puts you in physical harm because when they're, crossing ahead of you and they're beating each other.
Yes.
You've
got to look out for yourself.
You've got to look out for yourself. So there's a lot of debriefing. You have to talk it out. There's a lot of counseling and therapy that goes into it, so that in the next day you're not releasing your frustrations from the previous case onto your next client.
Absolutely.
They have nothing to do with that dispute, so you handle each issue as it comes. Debriefing is very important. You'll find cases of alcoholism professionally are on the rise because we're trying to cope with the various issues that we see.
All right.
Yes.
Absolutely. So that's very, very sad. And those of you that are following this conversation, I really feel that we need to be very bold to tell people, because as pastors, these people come to us at the beginning, when things are not so bad. Maybe at that time there's revelations, of some infidelity, and maybe the man or the woman comes to the pastor, pleading and crying and saying, please help me, this is going on, I'm so devastated and stuff like that, and we try and help. But you're saying that when it gets to the lawyers, that really is the tail end of the dispute, and that's the time you see the real bare open evil, spewing out of a person, the most ugly part of human beings, like being born, being displayed in the courtrooms of the country. So you've mentioned the things that lead to that. And because you're a Christian, first of all, we haven't talked about your own personal, testimony and all that. How has that made you feel as a Christian, and has that strengthened your faith? I think I'd mentioned, and I want to tie this to something else I'd mentioned, and then you speak into it. I mentioned off the set about the auctioneer, and what I learned from one auctioneer who said, an auctioneer, as they watch people crying when they are dragging away the wardrobe and the fridge from their houses, and the mother and the father there are crying because of their property being auctioned away. Auctioneers then tend to react the other way. They tend to be very cautious investors, and most auctioneers end up very rich, being very rich. So, in your context, what does that make you? How does that kind of transform you?
It has strengthened my faith in ways I didn't even know could be done. If I compare my faith in 2015
yes,
and now,
yes,
it's so much higher and stronger. Because now I'm relying on God for revelation on how to handle everything.
yes,
As opposed to before, where it was by power or might, and we know, not by power, not by might, but by His Spirit.
yes,
Because if you have to carry all of that by yourself, it will crush you.
yes,
The weight, the sheer weight of family law, the sheer weight of any other dispute that a lawyer has to handle on a daily basis, it might crush you, because everyone has their, the threshold of pain. You have your upbringing that determines also, and your exposure. I would say for me, I've learned to pray a lot, to do a lot of Bible study. I mentioned earlier about your jurisprudence. My natural law jurisprudence has guided even how I do my court writing, how I prepare for court, how I prepare for meetings, how I prepare my contracts.
yes.
So I would say for me, I'm a very different case. I'm a test study. I told you earlier, to lawyers, I'm just pastor,
Yes.
So for me, it's different in that I have God to rely on. Even when I don't know how to handle something, there are cases where I'm, literally drawn up pleading, saying, God, I've told the client, this is a losing case. And we go to court, and somehow the argument that comes out persuades the judge otherwise. And we may not win the case, but we get very, very good orders in
Yes.
what is called interim, which is in the middle of, as the matter is proceeding. And even the client is shocked because, they know they do not deserve those orders.
Yes.
So it strengthened my faith.
Yes.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Now, before I forget, you also mentioned that there is usually in a divorce proceedings, judges normally recommend, kind of as they see this thing falling off, falling apart, things are very emotive. They normally kind of like send people into alternative dispute resolution options.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about that.
Right. So there's what is called alternative dispute resolution mechanisms. That's ADR.
Yeah.
And they are court. The court will send you because they see like this can be certified as something that can go there. The parties are not too far gone, but they do still request you. This is what we feel should happen. Are you agreeable to it? If you're not agreeable to it, then it's okay. So basically ADR involves mediation, it involves conciliation, negotiations, arbitration, so that you can see how the parties can best come together and either agree to disagree or just agree on the terms.
Okay.
Yeah, so if you disagree completely, then you go back to court and say you disagreed. If you've agreed on the terms and there's an award or a report, depending on which ADR mechanism you used, either it's a reward or a report that is taken back to court, and you file it in court as a consent of the parties. So the parties have consented that they do not agree. The parties have consented that they agree on certain terms, and then the other terms will be determined by the court.
Okay.
Or they've agreed on everything totally.
Okay.
It has helped in very, very many cases, and this cuts across not just family law. Also the Employment and Labor Relations Court, parties are being requested to go through ADR mechanisms, and it's really helping.
Yeah.
Because half these disputes, even in commercial disputes, it's just two friends that have disagreed.
Yes.
It started out as a friendship.
Yes.
Yeah, so ADR really helps.
Yeah, and the marriage is the best example of two
Yes.
friends.
Yeah.
I mean, when you these two people met, had coffee.
Yeah.
Everything was going very well. So, and then now here they are shouting at each other and
Yes.
fighting and tearing each other in
Yeah.
court.
Yeah.
So you wish that you could send them back to that table
Yes.
where they were.
Yeah.
With someone who can mediate that conversation. And then hopefully they can find their footing.
There are some who have.
Yeah. Oh.
And withdrawn their petitions for divorce.
Uh-huh.
Yes.
Wow. Wow.
They come back together and decide they want to give it another go.
Uh-huh.
And it works. It does work. There are some who even go through the whole divorce process, Gigi, and you wouldn't believe it.
Yes.
They reconcile and remarry.
They go back to the
They
pastor.
go back to the pastor and find, you know, despite the fact that the decree is out,
Yeah.
they love each other and they are willing to give it another go and they remarry.
Uh-huh.
Yes.
Oh, man. You need to tell the Kenyans that divorce is not the end.
It's not the end.
Not, it's the whole sense of kind of some people need to go through hell. I don't wish it for anyone. But you can go through hell and then get to the other side and realize how hot and how horrible it was, a pit, and you repent. And look the other person in the eye. They too are repentant like you are. And the two of you concurrently decide this is not good
Yes.
for us. And then you start all over again.
Yeah.
And then you discover the love that was lost. What a redemptive story.
Yeah, each one has their own mate. So you might roam the earth, but you won't find another. You come back right where you belong.
Absolutely, absolutely. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about succession, and I want to talk about some of the big succession cases that have Kenyans are probably not aware that there are some big succession cases.
Yeah.
We mentioned it at the beginning, but I want us to go back to it. The issue of succession and why it is so people must pay attention to the idea of providing maybe some will of some sort, or at least even if they won't have a will, but at least the family themselves, they should just wake up to the reality that unless we agree, this could be a very long dispute.
Yeah.
And it can deny us enjoyment of the very things that we're disputing about.
Yeah.
Yes. So tell us about your experience in that domain.
So we've been doing a training, like I told you earlier, online from May with regard to succession, probate, and administration.
Yes.
And it's because, just like you said, it's a topic people don't want to talk about, but it's so necessary at a time such as this, especially with COVID.
Yes.
There was a time people were dying literally every day.
Yes.
So the whole aspect of succession and estate planning is to ensure that you've taken care of your beneficiaries after you're gone, and
Yeah.
you're protecting your assets and your estate, what is called your estate, from waste. Waste being your children and your spouse maybe just finishing everything within a year or so.
Yes.
So with regard to estate planning, you have two ways. You have what you've mentioned, the will, and you have trusts.
Yes.
So the larger your estate, I would advise that you get both. Get a will and get a trust. Like in the Njenga Karume case, he had both a will and a trust.
Yes.
So what he did is he put majority of the vast estate in the trust because he wanted to cater to the future generations, not just the children.
Okay.
So you're able to cater even to your grandchildren's education. You're able to cater to, income, income from also the assets. Because if you invest it properly and you give instructions properly in your trust, then they get income every month. So with regard to your will, you set out the particulars very clearly. You sign your will properly so that it's not contested. Remember, I told you about validation
Yes.
of a will.
Yes.
And one of the things that can invalidate a will is that you don't sign it properly. It's not witnessed by two independent witnesses, preferably who are not your beneficiaries. So not your children, not
Yes.
your wife.
Yeah.
And other things that can invalidate a will, like you're doing a will when you're drunk or when you have a mental illness. So you're not of sound mind. And
Okay.
people of unsound mind cannot sign a contract. It's not. It can be voided.
Yes.
So you need a will. Now, cases where even wills have been voided, there's a long-standing case where the guy had two wills, one in London and one in Nairobi, and they were both invalidated simply because of technicalities. Technicalities being one was not signed properly, the other one was not witnessed properly, and you can have even advocates who do not advise you properly on how this is done.
Yes.
So that's why we're intensifying on the training so that your estate does not go to waste. Then also there are aspects of dying without a will, and then the case drags on for years and years and years. I mentioned a case to you, is it the Kirima case? Not Kirima. I forget
Kanyotu.
not Kanyotu. Kanyotu is a 2012 case. Mbiyu Koinange.
Yes.
The Koinange case from 1981, and the most recent ruling in that case is of April 2021, before Justice Muchalula. So you can imagine that's like over a span of 21, 22 years of a case. It's just ongoing. It's not coming to an end. The importance of estate planning means that your beneficiaries, they get to know exactly what your wishes are with regard to your property.
Yes.
Remember, you're the one who works for the property, not them.
Yes.
So they cannot fight what is called ad infinitum, to the end of time, over what you have worked hard for. They need to also be working hard.
Yes.
That's a bit the importance of wills.
Yes.
Yeah. I don't know if there was another part to.
Yeah. I like that. I like that. So what you're saying is that people can actually, in one of the cases, you know, the number of beneficiaries are so few, yet the property in contest, is vast, billions of shillings.
Yes.
That even if you divide it over the 20 or so claimants, it's really nothing. I mean, they will be millionaires or billionaires actually as soon as the documents are signed, but they can't get themselves to reconcile.
Yeah.
Okay. Research, especially in the social research about the welfare of children, the evidence seems to suggest that children growing up in a single parent household perform less. They perform less well. I'm trying to put it well, compared to children that grow up in two parents households. Yeah, you know, in terms of their success, especially when you observe over a long period of time. So, what do you think can be done in terms of, like, for example, the custody? If custody is granted to the mother and fathers never get to see these children, what has been your observation in terms of the impact on the children?
The children need a lot of counseling and therapy. What tends to happen is they feel a deficit. There's an imbalance.
Yes.
So the kind of things that a father, or the absentee parent, let me say that because it's not always the man.
Yeah.
The absentee parent will give some kind of guidance, discipline, nurturing that the other parent will not give. So that imbalance, the children start to look for it in other places. So you find this child is moody, this child becomes, the education struggles, so they don't do very well in school for a period of time, until they either gain their footing or they completely just don't get it. And I found there are some schools now that do offer in-house counseling for the children in such situations, or children going through any kind of situation, basically. And if the schools are not providing that, then while we are doing, like for my firm, when we're doing the parental responsibility agreements, we do tend to insist that the agreement includes a clause for counseling.
Right.
It's very, very important. Like you said, the children are impacted, and in a negative way. So you should not even cut out a parent completely. There are no, you can have even supervised visitation and access, but not cutting out a parent completely.
Yeah, because, and I think the reason why I've revisited that issue is because I think I have, we've read of, stories, and this is what really trends in the social media, where, people are saying, look, this guy, I don't want him to ever get close to my children and stuff like that. While the person who, and I don't want to assume it's the woman, it can be the man, actually, who says, I don't want this woman to get anywhere close to these children. They actually may not quite realize that they are denying those children something that will actually benefit those children.
Yes.
So that's what you're saying?
Yes, there's always a benefit to having both parents, with the exception, of course, of death. And in such cases, expose your children to a male father figure. Have your father around, or your brothers, or a pastor who's a friend of yours, or a mentor, at least a male father figure, because there's always that balance that is lacking. You can tell when you interact with those children that there's a deficit. So that exposure is very, very important.
Okay.
Yes.
So what do you think the church can do? You're a member of CITAM.
Yes.
Karen, so you've been in the church space.
Yes.
We're using very fancy language, church space. Yeah, so what would you advise, pastors and church leaders to do, especially when if they think there is a family that is going through that kind of a situation in terms of helping the children? What would be your advice?
First thing is always just to cement what you're suspecting, have these family outreach programs, yeah? Whether they're in the church, you can have a fun day where you have the families come. Just from that, you'll be able to make your initial assessment.
Yes.
In law, we call it prima facie.
Yes.
Just on the face of it, you'll be able to tell. Then after that, you can now single it out and have like a single parents meeting and see whether what you saw was actually a single parent situation or one parent is just not in the picture.
Yes.
Then after that, you can have individual sessions with teens and with young adults where you get to have open space discussions with them, round table, break them up into small groups, have them talk out their situations or their issues with a pastor at each table.
Yes.
You'll find that the youth always have so much to say about their home setups,
Yes.
really honest opinions about their mothers and fathers.
Yes.
Then have men and women's fellowship joint, where you now discuss the role of parents in the lives of the children and how their relationships, forge even their take as young people of what a relationship looks like. Charity begins at home. Your children cannot do better than you. There's a legal maxim, nemo dat quod non habet. You cannot give a better title than what you have. So if your child has only seen a broken home, then that's what they relate to. That's what they form an opinion about love.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I like you squeezed some Latin stuff there. You lawyers. No. Adrian, I'll tell you that I have a lot of respect for lawyers and the legal profession because, by the way, it's one of the oldest professions.
Yes, it is.
It's one of the oldest. In fact, law and theology are the very foundation of even academic and intellectualism, because you guys are the very bottom, because you're dealing with society at a very, very tangible place, and a lot of law was always taught in Latin. Latin was the language of law. Yeah. So for our viewers, so if you have to go to learn a little bit of Latin if you're going to be a good lawyer. I love that. I love that. Okay, very good. So Adrian, we have just about a minute or so to go as we wrap this up. And I love what you talked about, the children bait. That's so helpful to some of the Christian pastors that are watching and youth pastors. Maybe you could speak to youth pastors, single mothers, and people that are having to deal with very, very difficult family situation, and just assure them that there is hope, and they don't have to come to you, because when they come to you, they're going to have to pay you.
They'll pay me handsomely.
That's your camera.
Right. Thank you so much to the youth pastors, the single parents, and even those parents who are in some kind of family dispute, anyone who's dealing with younger children, young adults, teenagers. What I would say to you is this: observe, observe, observe. You'll only tell initially what the signs are because you've observed. You can read books and reach out to your pastors, but even if you reach out and you really haven't picked up on the signs, then it's in vain. And once you pick up on the signs, do not ignore. Most of us tend to ignore, and that's why we get into situations where the children or the young adults are so far gone. And once you see that there's an issue, reach out to your pastors. There's that spiritual nourishment that the child needs. In as much as they'll get the counseling, that spiritual nourishment is also very much needed. Involve them in groups. They tend to talk a lot in groups as well. Do that in as much as possible. Have them in programs like outreach programs. Let them reach out to, in slums. Once they see that, then they're able to also appreciate some of the things that are going on in their home. Sometimes you'd find it's not just the stress of a divorce or a separation, it's also their perception of what parenting could be like in comparison to other children. So peer pressure also. So I would say just pray, and then pray for them. Very important. Pray for them and reach out.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. That's all that's all we had for the time we have had, and thank you very much for staying tuned in. And we got to bring this to a close. I don't want to add anything else, just to thank you for staying tuned and staying with us on this program. I have been your host, Godfrey Gichuki. This is the Gigi Report. We'll be back same time, same place, same channel. God bless you. Bye.